Welcome to Leading with Skylight. Jessica Johnson and Rhonda Gipson-Willis are an energetic duo proven to be effective in team building, dynamic storytelling, and organizational leadership. As former social workers, they have a genuine gift to help others go higher. Their relationship-oriented approach and ability to help leaders find their own solutions make them unique. They add value and widen perspectives, in addition to helping individuals reframe thoughts and take ownership of their potential. Leadership is not necessarily about your title, but rather about your influence. Leaders set direction, they sell vision, embrace conflict, and shape culture. And here today we have the one and only Rhonda Gipson-Willis. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Monica.
So tell me about Skylight Leadership.
Okay, Skylight Leadership is what you described, but it's a leadership development and coaching firm. And so what we've done is we've used a lot of the skills and training that we've learned over the years as social workers, and we've taken that to another venue, which is taken us out of the child welfare arena into the professional, organizational, corporate world.
Great, and this was really started by you and Jessica, and you guys are best friends.
Yes, yes.
Tell me about that. What is it like going into business with your best friend?
Oh wow, it's a really interesting, revealing process. One of the things that was really good about it is that we knew each other, and we knew each other really well, and so we knew the strengths that we both brought to the process, and we also knew each other's weaknesses, so to speak, or challenge areas, and the ways that we can help support each other in bringing the business to where it needs to be. And so it's been a really interesting process, but suffice to say that despite how well we knew each other after 13 years of friendship, we've learned a whole lot about each other over these last 3 years.
Awesome, great. Well, you had mentioned this idea of what you would do if you weren't afraid. So did you go into this business because you felt like that this would take a lot of courage to follow your dream?
Oh, definitely. And when you mention that, it's funny because that's actually the question that I asked myself. There was a change in our company that we worked at previously. Jessica and I worked together, and there was going to be another company coming in and taking over, and I was walking to my office and I heard a voice in my head say, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And when I went to my office, I typed the response to myself, and one of the first responses was, I'd bet on me. And I'd invest in me, and I stopped stopping, because there were times that we had explored going out and doing another business, which we had developed a business 10 years prior together. And because of fear, we never fully let go of our full-time job and embraced the potential that company had. And so had we done that, that company would have grown to, it would have been very successful because of the success that we were seeing as doing as a side project. And so when I asked myself, what would you do if you weren't afraid? What I'd do if I weren't afraid was go out and do it full time, they talk about the burn the boats. When you get to where you're going to go, there's no plan B, and just going all out. And so that's pretty much what we did.
Awesome. Well, leading into this, Steve Jobs once said, if you are working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you.
Yes.
And in some trainings, I've watched you guys speak, you guys identify reasons why people have trouble following their dreams. Some of those are fear of rejection, lack of confidence, and more importantly, disappointment. So why is it important, Rhonda, to put your dreams to the test?
Well, because there are a lot of people who are living lives that are not as fulfilled as they would like for them to be. And the reality is that life is really short. Sometimes it feels really long, but life is really short. Having lost my mother at 56, she was 56 when she died. When she passed away, I looked at that and I thought, wow, 56 is coming up really quick. And she had a lot of unfulfilled dreams, a lot of things that she wanted to do. I remember she had a fear of flying. So she had never flown. We had gone to Cancun as a family, and she was like, unless I could drive there, I'm not going, right? And so one of the things that she said literally on her deathbed was, if I make it out of this, I'm getting on a plane. And I didn't want to be at the point where I said, if I make it out of this, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I wanted to explore and do whatever that was. And so exploring a dream really meant that I had to put those things in perspective of which regret would I rather have? The regret of pursuing a dream and failing at it, or not pursuing a dream and looking back on my life and going, wow, that part was a bit unfulfilled.
And I feel like a lot of people on their deathbeds really do have all these regrets and say, I wish I would have done this.
Yeah.
Or they tell themselves, someday I'll do that. And those words are really daunting. So I'm glad that you really found the courage to do this, because it's a great organization that you guys are a part of and that you guys founded. What are some of the questions that you ask yourself when you're trying to put your dreams to the test?
Oh, wow. I mean, there are a lot of things. You have to ask yourself, is this realistic? So when we first started this business, we were looking at this to be an outshoot of the other business, which was a counseling agency, but we knew we wanted to do training. We wanted to do training. We thought about doing therapy because we're both licensed clinical social workers, so we're therapists. We've done that for a number of years. And when it came to looking at the pivot of going from the more clinical aspects of it, from the mental health perspective to the leadership perspective, that was something that was realistic and it made sense because the skills that we had here would translate well over there. Now, if we said that we want to be aeronautic engineers, that would have been completely unrealistic for me, right? And so we have to really confront whether we're setting ourselves up for failure. So that's one of the questions, the reality question. Is this really something that's within my reality? The other is the people question. Who are the people that you're surrounding yourself with? And that goes along the lines with partnering with Jessica. I knew certain things about Jessica as a person. Jessica, she's a to-do lister. She's a task-oriented. She's all of these things that in other ways I'm not. So I needed her to kind of complement that. I needed, who are the people that are around you in your inner circle? Do you have people who support you? And for Jessica and I, we found a lot of support with our families, our husbands who basically, they're looking at the income almost going in half for the family income for the first year that you're developing this. And they said, we support that and we're going to do what we need to do to make sure that you can continue to pursue your dream. And so without the support of them, without the realistic goal, without, there's a number of other questions. We just did a workshop and we explored 10 of the questions that are necessary if you want to put your dream to the test. And each and every one of those requires that you take a good, hard, realistic look at what your situation is. Assess where you're at, assess where you want to be, and assess who are the people and what are the things that you need to make that happen. Like, do you have a good strategy? You can't just say, I just want to wake up tomorrow and do this.
Right.
Because there's a lot of pieces that go into place to make that happen. Ideally, I would love to say I would just like to do this, and then it happens. But that's why I have Jessica, because she's the strategy. She's the strategist of the two.
Awesome. You talk about writing down your goals and the importance of that. Why is writing down your goals so important to success?
Writing down your goals, it makes it real, right? So when you just have this nebulous goal out there and you say, these are the things that I want to do, but they're not written down. I mean, I don't know about you, but I forget a lot of things, right? If I don't write it down, if I don't put it in, it's easy to fall off track to what you're doing. When you write it down, that makes it real. That makes it a plan. It goes from being a dream to a plan. You can start to put actionable steps behind it, which allows you to baby step your way to the dream, right? Because sometimes we have these really lofty goals and we have these things that we want to accomplish and these ideas, and they can seem incredibly overwhelming and easy to walk away from. But when you write it down and you plan out how you're going to do it, these are the steps I need to do it. We have to, crawl before we walk. We have to walk before we run. And then the next thing you know, we may be able to do a marathon. Well, not me, I don't run like that. But we may be able to do a marathon. You don't just wake up and say, I'm going to do a marathon. So that's what it does. It allows you to make it real. And you make it real to yourself and you make it real to other people.
Great. You and Jessica recently did a training on diversity, but specifically called It's My Privilege.
Yes.
Tell me how teams and individuals can benefit from understanding privilege.
Well, these days, privilege has become a hot topic, right? It's become a hot word. When you hear privilege, people go, I fought for everything that I have. And that's true, but there are some things that come inherent with being who we are. So for me, or anyone who is in a majority category, whatever that category is, and let's take religion as an example. As a Christian, there's a religious privilege. As a right-hander, I have right-hand privilege. And there are a lot of people who are on the other side of what these privileges are, right? And so if I have the privilege of being raised in a middle income family, or I have these norms that are basically the same as, or not the same, but normal, so to speak, right? Because we like to put things in normal and abnormal. But if I have these norms and values that go with the mainstream population, then I have a bit of a privilege for people who don't. In the trainings that we've done, one of the trainings we use, we have an activity where we have bees, where people are able to ask and answer these questions. And these questions, it represents a physical representation of the amount of privilege that they have. And one of the first times that we did this, Jessica and I were in a training. We had also done the beads, and we were in a training with executives in a board, predominantly upper middle class, Caucasian. And one of the people who was a male, a white male, he picked his beads up and he said, "I feel bad about this. I really feel bad about this." And we looked at him and we said, the purpose of privilege is not for people to feel bad, it's for you to recognize that you have responsibilities. And those responsibilities don't mean that, you have to go out and beat the gong for whatever cause, but understanding that not everybody has the same experience that you have, and being more open to whatever, to what that looks like for them, or being empathetic to how that might appear. Because as someone whose beads weren't as long as his, I didn't want his pity. I don't want anybody's pity about that. I just want you to understand and recognize that your life experience has been different than mine. And just like I can learn things from you, there are a lot of things you can learn from me as well. So
awesome answer. I know that many teams and individuals have a hard time holding one another accountable with tasks, or even bosses for that matter. They do not hold their employees accountable. Why is that so hard for people to do?
Oh, well, you're talking about concepts that are, easy in theory, right? So we talk about all these things. We talk about trust, we talk about conflict, we talk about committing to things, we talk about the accountability, and we say just hold people accountable, right? Just do it. If only it were as simple as that. And the reason that accountability is so difficult to do is because people don't have all those other factors in place. And so when you haven't really developed the relationship and you haven't set up what the expectations are of what you're holding each other accountable to, when you haven't all agreed on what holding each other accountable looks like, then it's easy to go, ugh, there's that thing that Monica's doing that I should say something about, but I'm not really, because that's not my job, right? That's what the boss gets paid the big bucks for. But if we really look at our teams and we develop our teams in ways that they build trust with each other, that they're able to engage in unfiltered conflict around any topic. And basically, when we talk about conflict, we have a training that's called "Conflict is Your Friend." ... No, really. So that's the title of the training. It's probably one of our most popular trainings, because there are a lot of people who are really, really, really frightened of the concept of conflict, right? There you have these 5 conflict styles, and most people would avoid conflict like the plague if they could. So if they see an issue coming up and they're like, I should really tell Monica that thing she's doing is not the way that she's supposed to be doing it, but she's so nice and I don't want her to be mad at me. So when we put feelings into this, and we're not real sure how you would take the message, because maybe you'll think I'm just trying to be hard on you. Maybe you'll think that I'm just, I want to get you in trouble with the boss. So now I don't feel comfortable approaching you with this issue. You're never told that whatever it is that you're doing, that you maybe thought you were doing correctly, you were doing incorrectly, until it becomes this huge issue, and now it's on your yearly evaluation, right? That's what tends to happen. And so the accountability, if you really look at developing your teams the way they need to be developed, developing the trust amongst them, helping and encouraging, as a supervisor, you should be encouraging conflict. Not conflict like people are outside your door fighting about things, but let's talk about these different expressions of opinions. What's your opinion about this? I want to hear what it is you have to say, even if it's completely opposite from mine, because that's the only way that I can really learn from you, right? But if we're afraid to engage in dialogue on those real levels, then there are things I might not ever learn, because you bring a whole new life experience and worldview that I may not have ever had, right? So accountability is really difficult for teams because they haven't really mastered. You know, they say, "Oh, we're a great team. We go out and we hang out after work and we do all of these things." Well, yeah, but are you a really great team? And really great teams can get really real with each other. Right. Really real. So.
Well, going off that question regarding employee engagement, 30% of employees are engaged. 52% of employees are not engaged. Meanwhile, 18% of people are actively disengaged. And I've heard you speak before, and you gave a boat analogy. Can you share that?
Sure. So I use the analogy of if you're in a rowboat, and I know a rowboat typically has a specified number of people, but I don't know what that is, so I just make things up. But if you have a rowboat and going off of the Gallup numbers, and you're looking at, you have 30% of your people who are actively engaged, and actively engaged means that these are the people who are passionate about their work. You know, they care about the mission. They want to see this place succeed. They have an emotional attachment to it. I love my job. Those are those people, right? Yes. 30%, only 30%. So in your boat, you have 30% of people who are just paddling their butts off, right? They're like, that's where we're going now. I'm going to get us there. Woo! I'm working. Then, according to Gallup, you have about 52% of folks who are a bit disengaged. These are the folks who are just kind of like, you know, I'm here because they pay me, and I'm only going to do as much work as it is that you pay me for, and you don't pay me enough to do the work that I do, so I'm going to do even less than that unless you're looking at me, right? And those are your folks who have basically quit and stayed. So in your boat, you have those people, and they are sitting around, they're checking out the scenery, right? So you have your 3 who are really paddling. You have your 5 who are just kind of checking out the scenery, unless somebody looks at them and then they go, oh yeah, I'm paddling too. I'm working, see, I'm doing that. And then when you stop looking, they stop paddling, right? That's half of your workforce. Half. Then, if you look at your actively disengaged, these are your saboteurs. These are the people who hate their job, and they're going to make sure everybody else knows how much they hate their job. And they're going to impede the work of that 30% of people who really, really enjoy their job. So let's go back to that analogy. You have your 30%, your 3 people in the boat who are paddling their butts off. You have 5 people in the boat who are just kind of looking around, and if somebody happens to look at them, they do a little something. And then you have 2 people in the back of the boat drilling holes. That's the landscape that, on average, we're dealing with. On average. And so part of our mission at Skylight is to really pull, particularly that 50% who can kind of take it or leave it, pull them into the actively engaged. And if you need to look at your actively disengaged folks, they may need to be relocated someplace else where drilling holes is a good thing. Right? And so really taking a look at your company and taking a look at your teams and taking a look at how it is you can get to the places you need to, because it's very difficult to get anywhere with that dynamic.
Do you think, though, sometimes millennials don't feel understood, which is why they feel like they're not engaged, like they're not being recognized? Do you think that's an issue?
Well, you tell me, Miss Melina.
I would say so, but yes.
But I agree. And, you know, I say it all the time. I say, millennials, we are giving them such a hard time about things that we don't understand. So again, it goes back to privilege. Right now, there's more of us in the workplace, but you guys are coming in, and you'll be taking over pretty soon. So it behooves us to kind of get to know you, right? To use the privilege that we have and say, okay, let's extend the olive branch. Let's see what it is that you need to know. Because millennials are like, look, I like work, but work is not my life. The boomers are like, work is my life, and then I have a little life after that. And, casual Friday, everybody's showing up, and, your millennials have their jeans on and their flip-flops, and folks are looking at them like that. But we have to be able to extend the olive branch and say, okay, what are the strengths that you bring, the things that you all are able to do? Because you've grown up in the age of technology. And so there are things that we may have said, okay, this is an 8-hour task that a millennial may be able to finish in 5 hours, and they're sitting around like this. Millennials want to work in places that matter, right? They want to be attached to a mission. So if you cannot articulate what your mission is, if you cannot articulate, if they don't feel that it's a company and a business with a heart, millennials will easily check out. If they don't feel appreciated for the gifts that they're bringing, don't try to push me into what it is that the way that you do it. Let me be me. Let me do things my way, because millennials have also figured out that there's 1,000,001 different ways to be employed, right? So we have to be willing to take a look at what are the gifts and the strengths of the millennial generation, and stop looking at the millennials and going, so the millennials are going to save us. They're going to save us. I'd rather work with millennials. I mean, you guys are really cool, right? You have all your technology and gadgets. I love my gadgets. And so in terms of looking at how do we engage more with millennials, I think that companies really need to put a lot of effort into that. You know, you have your Googles and your Facebooks and a lot of your Silicon Valley type companies who are run by millennials who are really getting that company culture and engagement stuff right. To some generations, that looks like a lot of play. Right. But obviously, they get a lot of work done. Right?
Very true. I would second that. Some roadblocks, Rhonda, get in the way of really being able to effectively communicate and listen. So a lot of employees, they're judging, they're criticizing, they're blaming other employees, or they're saying, hey, you know, you should be doing this. How can individuals and teams really enhance their communication?
Well, and when you look at employees and not really getting their people, that represents a disconnect. And the disconnect, oftentimes, at least according to Gallup, happens in that middle management piece. And so part of it is you really have to invest in that portion of your team, your managers, your middle managers, so that they can communicate the messages from upper management to your direct staff, and from your direct staff to upper management. So that's one way. Well, that's one way of doing it. Another way is, again, going back to developing your teams, developing and growing and strengthening your teams. One of the things that Gallup talks about in terms of their 12 questions that they have, one of them and towards engagement is, do you have a best friend at work? People look at that and go, what? I don't come to work, you know, for friendship. I come to work. Where there's a benefit to developing relationships, to being able to have a safe place to kind of vent some of this stuff and help somebody to help you reframe what's going on at your company, or either to just feel like you're supported in the workplace. And so really looking at building your teams, trust building. We talk about trust building, and people will say, oh, come on in and we want you to do some trust building. And it's an annual event. And then, you know, you do the trust building and then you leave and you go, okay, so what's your plan to maintain the trust? Because we can't trust build one day. We have to continuously trust and build and work on those things. And so what's your relationship management plan for your teams, for your middle management to connect to their people? Because it's easy for us to disconnect when we become abstractions, right? So if I'm in upper management and I hardly ever see or hear from anyone who's directly doing the work, it's easy for me to attribute different things to them. It's easy for me to not really understand who they are and what they do. But, which is why there's a benefit to a show like Undercover Boss, right? Think about Undercover Boss. Undercover Boss, oftentimes they're like, things are going great, things are awesome, we hit all of our quarterly projections, blah, blah, blah. And then they go into the field and they talk to their people and they're like, whoa, I had no idea that was a problem. And then they're always handing over all these great gifts and because they're dealing with real people and real issues. Whereas before they have that connection to that level, they might not understand that. So communication really evolves around developing the relationship. And then when you develop your relationship, also having conversation around how do we handle conflict here? How do we hold each other accountable? How do we support our relationship? If there's a question or a problem that you have with Monica, this is how I want you to approach me. I want you to know that when I say open door, I mean open door. And by that, I mean that if there's something I told you, if I said, if you have an issue or a concern, you could bring it to me, and I don't respect the boundaries and the expectations that I've given you of how I would respond to that, I give you permission to hold me to task. So then that's how we really build relationships on a human level, because along with privilege, again, that's a privilege, right? It's like I'm at this place and I don't realize that there are these expectations that people have of who I am based on the title. So I have to be very mindful of that. And being mindful of that, I also have to extend and maybe even overextend myself to people who I think should just get it. I mean, like, I'm a nice guy. I walk around and I say hi to everybody. But if you're in upper management, you have to go a step further and really be intentional about developing relationships.
These are great topics. I think you and Jessica are doing an awesome job. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing about leadership.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. That is all we have for Leading with Skylight. Stay tuned for more episodes coming up.
Will there be more episodes?